Hey everyone, I'm here today to talk with you about the Royal Heirs Academy by Lindsay Duga. I just finished this book today, so I wanted to talk about it. This was pretty much a 2-star book for me, and those 2 stars were for the family drama and Alaric Eldana, my two favorite parts of this book. Unfortunately, despite the fact that that was in there, there was a lot of things that I also didn't like, and a lot of things that just felt pointless. So anyway, let's brief recap it. So this story revolves around this king of Ashland, which is a made-up country, kind of like Genovia and the Princess Diaries, right? And he has 3 heirs, and he has to protect them. So we kind of find out from the prologue that I presume the king's children, whom he is skipping over, by the way, for succession, he doesn't want any of them to succeed, um, are trying to kill each other's children, which is really wild because the only thing that we know for sure, other than that their lives were in danger, is that Emmeline was found with a bottle of like poison in her baby bottle, right? And like that was like the catalyst that made the king send them away. So he sent his 3 heirs to different countries to be taken care of by nannies so that they would be out of harm's way. Now, the heirs are Titus Eldana, and he was sent to London, England. There's Alaric Eldana, and he was sent to Dublin, Ireland. And there was Emmeline Eldana, who is sent to New York City in the United States. They all had different last names, like Alaric's is Durham, and Durham he frequently uses his fake last name, so his is the only one I remember. I think Titus's was something like Titus Cross or something like that, and I do not remember Emmeline's at all. But they are kept secret until they reach the age of 17, 18, something like that. And then they were brought to the Almas Terra Academy, which is like this really fancy academy for the biggest brains in the world and the richest people in the world, kind of a thing. And then, of course, we have Sadie Aurelia, and Sadie Aurelia is Rando from Ashland, who was chosen through a scholarship program to go to the Almastera Academy, which is all she thought, but she was actually also chosen by the king to be an heir be in the running to be an heir, right? There's no particular reason that is ever given why he chose her, at least not in this book. I know this is like book one. And clearly there are going to be other books, but yeah, there's no real reason given. But she is very different from the other 3 because she actually has compassion. She, the dog that I'm watching is itching herself. If you can hear some noise in the background, she's a good girl. But Sadie is very compassionate. She comes from a background where she lost family members to illness and mental illness. So she is very compassionate. She really cares about the people, and she really wants to help people. That's her whole thing. Then you have Alaric, and Alaric, despite being an heir, like a blood heir, he was raised in poverty. All of them had nannies that were supposed to take care of them, like I said, but his nanny ended up leaving one day and never coming back when he was around 9 or 10 years old, I think, somewhere around that age, very young. And so he's been taking care of himself ever since. And he just he's been taken care of by his boys. He's got his boys in Dublin, and he kind of fell into like fighting and kind of protecting himself and standing up for himself. And he's very smart, but in a different way than the other ones are smart. It's more of the street smart, worldly smart. Plus, he is also far more compassionate than the other 2, I would say. In that he doesn't think of himself. Like, sure, he is still an Eldana. He still falls into some of that attention seeking that the other ones have. But considering how like alone he's been, I'm not entirely surprised. But he ultimately wants to help people who are in worse positions than he's in. And that's why I love Alaric. He's one of my favorites. And then Titus and Emmeline were raised in wealth. So she lived in New York City. She was raised in a penthouse, basically, and London, England, and he was at like a all boys rich kids school before he went to Almas Terra, kind of thing. So, Sammy, she's probably going to be barking a little bit because there's a windstorm going outside and trees and I think a tree fell down and they're trying to fix it. So anyway, she's probably going to be barking a little bit. Can't really help it. But anyway, so almost Hera. So they all get there. They find out that they're going to be heirs for this thing. They don't like it necessarily. Well, Titus, though. Titus knew all along. The others did not know that they were in line to be heirs or even had royal blood, except for Sadie, as she does not have royal blood. But Titus knew because his parents are insane and they are like, they kept contact with him and they basically demanded that he become the best he could be because he's going to be the heir. And I think they essentially want to use him as a puppet for themselves so that they can have control because obviously they're not going to be given control. And I wouldn't be surprised if Titus's mother was the one who put poison in Emmeline's baby bottle. I'm just saying this pair of parents are like literally unhinged. They are very cruel to Titus. They basically treat him as a commodity and a means for their end. Very greedy, very evil, just not nice people. Emmeline's parents, who she hadn't met, she doesn't meet until later in the book, obviously, because she's never met them. They couldn't care less about her. They are like the opposite end of the spectrum where her mother is very vapid and very vain and just cares about herself. And when she does compliment Emmeline, it's just because she looks so much like her. And her father is like on the phone the whole time and does not care that she exists. And then you have Alaric, and Alaric only has his father. However, his father believes that Alaric is an illegitimate child and that he has no right to the throne whatsoever. And Alaric hates his father, obviously, because his father is extremely abusive towards him. So it's great. But and then Sadie is just, she's just Sadie. So interesting story beats. I'll go over my favorite things that I read in this book. So I did like that you saw the different traumas in these different characters come out in different ways and like understandable ways. Like Emmeline is very affection starved. Her nanny was very strict and very cold. Her parents do not care that she exists. A lot of her motivations seem extremely contradictory to each other, but that could also just come from trauma, because like she her whole goal is to be loved by her family. She wants to achieve this, become the heir to be loved by her family. And I'm kind of like, well, girl, you are being unkind because she is the most ruthless out of all of the cousins, in my opinion. And it's like, well, girl, those boys are also your family, and you are like ripping them to shreds, right? But I assume she means she wants her parents and her grandfather to love her. But then she also like she hates Sadie because Sadie to her, she's like, you're taking my cousins away from me. You're taking my family away from me, and I hate you for that. And it's like, well, girl, what you clearly don't care about your cousin, so why are you saying that? You're crazy. But she also gets herself into bad situations, like with her kind of boyfriend Sebastian, who the only reason why she's dating him is to keep tabs on Titus because they are roommates and to have access to Titus's room so she can be shady. But like there's some makeout sessions in this book. There's no spice, but there is a lot of making out, and I skim the making out because I don't want to read it. I'm gonna be honest. There is some dialogue between the smooching, so like I'll read the dialogue, but that's it. But one of the reasons why she would make out with Sebastian is because she was affection starved and she wanted to be held, she wanted to be hugged, and I think that's very realistic. I think coming from a person like that, it makes a lot of sense. And her being so cold and ruthless also makes sense because she was never really given the affection that every human being deserves, right? And so she ends up being the most ruthless, and I'll go more into what she does. But Titus's interesting story beat is that he actually suffers from rheumatoid arthritis, and he doesn't find this out until later. It's hinted that there's something wrong with him, but he doesn't know what, and he believes it's just stress related because that's what his parents always told him. And he's not allowed to have any weakness. He's not allowed to have anything wrong with him, according to his parents, which is a wild take. And so he's terrified to find out that there's something wrong with him. But he does eventually find out that he has rheumatoid arthritis, and he has to start taking medication for it. However, he obviously keeps this under lock and key. He doesn't want anyone to find out any weakness that he might have. But his shady thing is that he starts dating or trying to seduce Sadie because he wants her to basically knock herself out of the running for heir because he figures if I'm her boyfriend, she will leave this role automatically. and she will just leave it up to me. I will take the role and sure, whatever. And this would have been really, I mean, initially when he comes up with this plan, I'm like, ew, dude, that's nasty. Like, I hate this, playing with a girl's heart like that. The only problem is within like a couple chapters, he's genuinely in love with Sadie, or at least that's how it appears. And so it leaves me like, okay, so we're supposed to believe that you don't like her, or that you're just doing this because you want to be the heir. Like, it's not believable because he falls in love with her so quickly. It's just not believable. So, but that's on the table. Those are his two big things, right? And then you have Ulrich, and Ulrich doesn't want to be here. He just doesn't. He doesn't want to be here. However, he has one of the most fun story beats, in my personal opinion, where he starts an actual riot. So in the school, Almas Terra, there is a hierarchy. The hierarchy goes the elites, which are children of like kings and presidents and so forth. You have the C-suites, and C-suites are children of corporate wealth, like CEOs and so forth. And then you have the scholars, and those are children who are only there by means of scholarship. They cannot afford to be there. They are only there because they got big brains. Okay. And the scholars are mistreated in the school by the C-suites and the elites. They basically have less rights. And Ulrich hates this, as he should. And he ends up becoming kind of the king of the king of the scholars. And at one point, he actually incites a riot against the C-suites and the elites in the like food hall, and he just causes a whole scene, and it's absolutely magnificent. And he essentially he becomes really good friends with the scholars. He stands up for them, and I really like that for him. I think that's a great character beat. Of course, he does have very Aldana behavior at times where he's, attention seeking, as I said, but he overall, though often unkind, he's one of my favorite characters, because I think, considering where he comes from and what he's had to deal with his whole life, and now on top of it being thrown into this royal game of some sort, though it's never really, the problem with this game and this thing is it's never really defined what the king is looking for in any of them, which it makes it very confusing. But anyway, Alaric doesn't really want any part of it, and I like him a lot. I think he's great. He does have a crush on Sadie, that's pretty clear, but he never really makes like a serious move on her, and I don't think they ever even kiss. And when he finds out that Titus has taken over, he pretty much backs right off. He doesn't really want to see them because it hurts him to see them, but he also doesn't do anything to disrupt it, which I think is pretty respectful. And he does beat up Titus at one point because he hears Sebastian talking. Sebastian and him, he perceives. I don't think Titus actually said anything, but I know Sebastian was saying some heinous stuff. But, like talking disrespectfully about Sadie, and then he goes and he beats Titus up, which I thought was great. I wish he could have done that to Seb. I'm sure he would have if he'd had the chance. But it was good. And I just like Alaric. Okay, he's great. Now, he doesn't want anything to do with the whole thing. And I don't know if I mentioned this. Did I mention his background? Okay, well, I'll repeat it. So his mother's dead. His mother died when he was little. And his dad believes that he is an illegitimate child. And so he tries to pay him off to get him out of the running to be an heir. And now Alaric really wanted nothing to do with being an heir in the first place. But as soon as he got that letter, he was like, oh, so you don't want me to be? So in spite of you, I'm going to be an heir. I'm going to be sitting on that throne. And so it backfires on his papa, his dear Da. And he, of course, he motivates himself. That motivates him to want to do it. So that was really funny. Alaric, what a guy. He'll do anything in spite of anybody. But yeah, he's a really interesting character. I think he has some really interesting character moments. And then, like I said, Emmeline is ruthless, and I'll go more into what she does later, but most of her most heinous crimes are later in the book. And Sadie is pretty boring. Pretty much her life revolves around Titus for most of this book, and I mean, not entirely. She obviously also Alaric and being smart and doing things. She becomes friends with a lot of people, specifically her other roommate named Trang and this boy named Oliver, who both are really intelligent. Trang is kind of a C-suite, but also her family's business is going bankrupt. And Oliver is a scholar who's extremely intelligent. And so she works with them, she hangs out with them. It's lovely. But Emmeline is at work here, and I'll get to the good stuff. So Emmeline, she is at work. She wants to destroy everybody. She wants to be number one. And she's already made some strides in that. She like destroyed Sadie's computer at one point and like other stuff. And her grandpa was very proud of her for that. But her big thing is she's planning the Hibernia Ball. And the Hibernia Ball is like the huge event for the C-suites and elites to have their parents come, because only the C-suites and elites could afford to come because it's a paid event. The scholars' parents certainly couldn't, but the scholars could go. But why would you want to go if your parents aren't going to be there? How depressing, right? But yeah, they make it very clear that they don't like the scholars there. You know what I mean? But this ball is a ball for the parents to come and see their kids and see where their kids live, I guess. But also, most importantly, it's also a secret world summit for the richest people in the world to pay off governments or get what they want or whatever, which is like a crazy thing to put in like the last quarter of your book, but that's what's happening. So they're planning this. They're all of the heirs are on this thing to make this happen. And everyone's kind of like, this is kind of weird. It's kind of weird that we're planning like a secret world summit, but I guess we don't have a choice. We're going to do it. So Emmeline is technically taking charge of it because she thinks that being able to accomplish this will impress her grandfather a lot. But on top of that, she is not done. She's ready to ruthlessly tear some people apart. Her cousins specifically, well, specifically Titus, and to destroy Sadie. She wants to take Sadie out once and for all. So she does two things. She catches Sadie, she corners Sadie, and she's like, "Hey, so just so you know, well, actually, before she does that, she corners Titus. And she's like, Titus, I know you have a secret. His secret being his rheumatoid arthritis. She doesn't know what it is, but she knows it's a secret. And she's like, I'm going to tell your parents that you have a secret, and they'll find out what it is, and you know they'll find out what it is if you don't record a video of you telling Sadie why you started dating her. And Titus absolutely freaks out, but he's like, yep, sure, I'll make that video for Sadie because I don't want anyone to find out my secret, right? Which is so stupid because a few chapters later, he tells his mother about his arthritis, right? He just kind of throws it all out. He's like, whatever, who cares anymore? But it's like, dude, you couldn't have gotten to that point before then, okay. Sure. Anyway, so he does. So Emmeline takes that video. She walks into the room and she's like, hey, Sadie, watch this, and makes Sadie watch this. And Sadie is like crushed because, oh, Titus doesn't really love her. It was all a manipulation schemes to get her out of the Ashland heir running, blah, blah, blah. She's crushed. And then Emmeline's like, okay, so you actually have to step down or else I've got this. And she pulls out like this journal that belonged to Sadie that used to belong to her father, who died when she was very little, and then belonged to her mother, who also passed away. And so that's like her only possession left from her family. And so she's like, Emmeline, let's talk about this. Like, let's be calm. And Emmeline was like, nope, wrong answer, throws it into the fire and it burns. And of course, this crushes Sadie and she absolutely has a meltdown. Now, for me, when I'm reading this, I'm like, Emmeline, you do realize you just threw away like your only leverage. Like, not that I don't agree with any of what she did, absolutely unhinged. But I'm like, you threw away your only leverage against Sadie. And now she has nothing to lose, which is exactly what happens in the last like few chapters of this book. She now has nothing left to lose. Now, of course, the king does come up to Sadie and he tells her, hey, you're out of the running, Sadie. Like, you're actually not as strong as I thought you were. No big deal. I'm just going to go with one of mine. And Sadie's like, oh, sure, fine. Can I still go to the ball, though? And he's like, yeah, sure. Come to the ball. So then Sadie's like, okay, you don't know what she has planned, but you know she has something planned. Absolutely crazy. So then they all go to this ball, and the king is very impressed. Emmeline did a great job, and it seems like Emmeline is going to be the chosen heir apparent by the end of this book. She's doing it all right. She's got her cards on the table. Sadie's knocked out. Her cousins are just whatever. And Titus tells his mother that he's rheumatoid arthritis. And Alaric tells his father that he's not going to back down from becoming an heir, whatever. It's all good. It's all great. It's all fun. Drama, family drama. But then, so the World Summit begins, the secret, shady World Summit where all these rich people are. And Sadie comes in with Oliver, who Oliver and Sadie were both in charge of the guest list, and they were in charge of making this program to like a pay portal program kind of thing, so that it was like kind of bringing Hibernia into the 21st century. Instead of people bringing like cash and checks, they were they were able to pay with the pay portal thing, whatever. Because two things they would pay for. They paid for obviously entrance into this event, but then also they would pay a portion that would go to this World Summit where they all started manipulating each other, or like, bribing each other, right? Or bribing governments. I don't know. It's not really explained, but that's the idea. So Sadie shows up at the World Summit, and the king is like, "Excuse me, what are you doing here? You're out of the running," And Sadie and Oliver are, like, are there. Oliver's got like this laptop, and Sadie is standing there, and she's like, "Well, actually, I feel like this money should go somewhere else, and unless you claim me as your heir apparent, all this money is gonna go away." And then immediately, like, the money, like, it shows like there's like 24 billion or something, and the money starts ticking down, right? And she's like, every like minute or every second or whatever, 50,000 of you, $50,000 is going to be placed into a charity's direct deposit or bank or whatever. I don't know. I can't remember. But basically $50,000 every minute is going into a charity of her choice that she picked, and not into their grubby little World Summit hands. And the only way to stop that from happening is for her to be named as heir apparent. So the king has no choice, and they find out that yes, the money is leaving the account. And very, very quickly, and the people start freaking out. They're like, "Hey, why don't you stop her?" They're like absolutely melting down. And the king goes, and he goes into the ball, and he says, "Okay, I've named Sadie Aurelia as my heir apparent." And at first everyone's like, "What's going on?" And then Titus starts clapping, and then everyone starts clapping. And Emmeline is absolutely crushed, and she's like, "Wait, your majesty, why?" And he's like, "Well, I thought you had all this under control, but apparently you didn't." And so she's crushed. And then the four of them go out because Sadie now has to get made up, right? And for her debut as heir apparent. And I really hated this. Okay. But it's like, I get that what Sadie went through kind of made her snap. She kind of realized she couldn't trust Titus, and Trang, her best friend, also, I guess, had some part in Emmeline finding out about her journal. It's not really explained, but that's the problem with this. It doesn't always explain things in a satisfactory way. But regardless, Sadie snapped, and now Sadie is as ruthless as the rest of them. She loses her compassion. She, like, the only thing compassionate about her at this point is that she wants to give to charity and she wants to take care of people. But when it comes to dealing with the other Eldanas, she will rip them to shreds, basically, and she doesn't think that you can trust anyone. Now, mind you, I get her being hesitant about being trustful of these people. I would be too. But I feel like Sadie becoming like them is the worst thing you could have done to her character, because that was the one thing that made her unique and it made her different. And I feel like if instead of becoming like them, that she had risen above them, like, I don't mind her blackmailing the Secret World Summit. Okay, let me make that very clear, because she blackmailed them into giving money to charity. So, like, that's fun. But, like, I feel like she should have risen above Emmeline's pettiness and Emmeline's like viciousness, and even Titus's and even Alaric's, like, and been more, and even become more compassionate for them and why they are the way they are. I really hate the idea that you have to match viciousness with viciousness. You know what I mean? Anyway. So that's how it ended. She is the heir apparent, but that could still change. There is going to be another book. I do think I'm going to read the other book, even though this was a 2-star. I kind of want to see what happens, and I want to check in on my boy Alaric. and see if there's any fun character developments, and see if Sadie can be like shaken back to normal. I don't know. There's a couple things that I do want to know. I'm curious enough. Like, I know it's a 2-star because the book wasn't that. Maybe it's more of a 2.5 or maybe a 3. But, like, really, I just want to find out what happens with Alaric. I love that guy. I want to know if he's okay. Is he okay? That's pretty much it. But there were a lot of things about this book that I didn't like. There was a lot of language I didn't like in this book, a lot of taking the Lord's name in vain and things like that. That's the only thing I don't really like about contemporary fiction. And of course, there is some innuendo conversations between some of the boys. Like I said, it's kind of gross, and making out. Those were things I did not like, but I kind of skimmed through them or just kind of was like, okay, we're just going to pretend like we don't see that. There were also a lot of like references to modern day things, like I think she like references to like Mario Kart or TV shows or movies that are like current, which I think always ages a book. Like this book is not going to be very relevant in like a few years, you know what I mean? Not Mario Kart is legendary all the time, but like, you know, there's certain things that I'm like, in a few years, is anyone going to know what that means? I just don't know. So that's it was kind of silly. But it's fine. It's fine. It's definitely a high school book, um, with cutthroat kiddos, with a little bit of like fantastical elements in it. I do love, the author writes, Alaric's accent, which he has a very thick Irish accent. And I freaking love that because every time I read it, I was like, oh, I can hear it. I can hear the brogue, you know? So, I did like that. Again, Alaric is my favorite part of this book. Especially, Sadie could have been, even if she was boring, she could have, I feel like if she had grown stronger in her compassion, I would have loved her a lot more, but instead, that did not happen. And now I definitely don't really care what happens to her in the next book. But again, I do want to find out, you know. So they got me, Lindsay Duga got me there at the very least. So well done, Lindsay Duga. Um, would I read this again? I might read it again before I read the second book, whenever the second book comes out. We'll see. But I don't really see myself, I would probably more skim it than read the whole thing. I will definitely be more cautious, I think, looking at any kind of contemporary YA fiction, just because I'm not a big fan. I'm just not a big fan. Especially since it's, you know, like it's secular fiction or mainstream fiction. And like I said, a lot of cursing, and, you know, there are some characters that are just, you know, not things that I agree with and things like that. So I'm not the biggest fan, but I did like enough of the main characters that I'm interested in seeing what happens next. So we are going to, whoop, Sammy heard a dog barking. She's excited. So yeah. So anyway, that being said, Royal Heirs Academy, would I suggest that you read it? No, I think you can absolutely skip this one, especially if you don't like YA fiction. Please don't read it. Like I said, there are things in it that I don't agree with. There are things in it that I don't appreciate, but I do like the characters. I do like the main characters, I should say, specifically Alaric. And I do want to find out what happens with him. I don't know if I'll buy the next book or maybe just borrow it, you know? But either way, I do intend to read the next book. However, I would probably also say don't pick that one up either. It's not actually worth it. I think I got this for like $10 or $9 or something like that. I can't remember, but I don't think it was worth the $10. So if I do find the other book, I would probably try to find it at a very extreme discount if I could. I don't know if that's possible. But anyway, my suggestion, don't read it. Pretty much my explanation, if you want, is all you need. If you do want to read it, I would suggest get it from the library. And I think that's it. It is kind of fun. There were fun things about it, or things that she did with the characters that were interesting, but it certainly wasn't enough. So that's my suggestion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember that I love you, but Jesus loves you more. And I hope you guys have a great day. All right. Bye.